Hello, everyone, and welcome to your English Chat Pod. I'm Elizabeth, and I'm really excited you're here today. We're going to explore something that can be tricky for many learners: how to continue conversations naturally without it feeling awkward or forced. Many learners know the grammar, they know the words, but conversations often stop after a short answer. Today, we'll fix that. I'll share practical tips so your English feels more fluent, friendly, and engaging. This episode is aimed at A2 to B1 learners, so everything will be clear, simple, and easy to follow. But even though the English is accessible, the content is practical and valuable, just like a real conversation. We'll focus on three main skills: extending your answers, asking follow-up questions, and reacting naturally. By the end, you'll have concrete strategies to make your conversations flow more smoothly. So grab a notebook or just listen carefully, and let's get started with the first skill: how to extend your answers naturally. Have you ever answered a question correctly, but the conversation just stops? You might answer, "I like reading," and then silence. That's a common problem, and it happens to almost every learner. It's not because your English is wrong. Conversations stop because the answers are often too short or don't give the other person anything to respond to. Think of it like a tennis game. If you only hit the ball once, there's no rally. Native speakers rarely stop after one short answer. They add extra details, feelings, or stories. For example, instead of saying, "I watched a movie," they might say, "I watched a movie yesterday, and it was so inspiring because of the story and the music." That gives someone else something to reply to. Small phrases like, "That's interesting," or "Really?" are also very useful. They show you're listening and engaged, and they invite the other person to continue. Even just a few words can make the conversation feel alive. So today, we're going to practice extending answers, asking follow-ups, and reacting naturally. By the end, your conversations will feel more confident, friendly, and engaging. Let's start with extending your answers. Short answers are correct, but they often leave the conversation flat. The trick is to add small details, explanations, or feelings to your sentences. For example, instead of just, "I like reading," you could say, "I like reading, especially historical novels, because I enjoy learning about the past." Now your answer is longer and interesting, and the other person has something to reply to. Or if someone asks, "Did you go out today?" instead of saying, "Yes, I went to the park," you can extend it. "Yes, I went to the park, I walked my dog, and saw a few friends playing football. It was really nice to be outside in the sun." Adding feelings or opinions is another way. For example, "I watched a movie yesterday, and I felt really happy because the story was inspiring." This helps the conversation feel personal and engaging. You can also include small examples from your life. If you say, "I like cooking," you could add, "I tried making pasta yesterday, and it turned out really well." A tiny story like this invites a response. Even just one extra sentence can make a big difference. It doesn't have to be long or complicated. The goal is simply to give the other person something to respond to. Try practicing this with everyday questions. If someone asks, "What do you do on weekends?" instead of, "I relax," try, "I relax on weekends. I usually read books and go for a short walk. It's my favorite way to recharge." Or, "I drink coffee every morning. I love trying different flavors, and it wakes me up for the day." These small additions make you sound friendly, confident, and fluent. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about giving a little more than a one-word answer so the conversation keeps moving naturally. Once you get used to adding these small details, your English will sound much more natural, and conversations will feel enjoyable rather than stressful. Next, let's talk about asking follow-up questions. These are questions you ask after someone shares information to keep the conversation going. For example, if someone says, "I went hiking yesterday," you could ask, "Where did you go hiking?" Or, "Did you enjoy it?" These are simple questions, but they make a conversation feel alive. Another example, if a friend says, "I like painting," you might ask, "What do you like to paint?" Or, "When did you start painting?" These small questions encourage the other person to share more. You can also use connectors like, "That sounds interesting. Why do you like it?" Or, "Oh, really? What happened next?" These phrases make your questions sound very natural. The key is genuine curiosity. You don't need complicated questions. Just show interest in what the other person is saying. That's what makes conversations smooth and friendly. Sometimes you can add a personal connection after a follow-up question. "I also like hiking on weekends." This invites them to respond and builds a connection. Follow-ups can be casual, polite, or friendly. Even simple questions like, "How was your weekend?" are excellent for starting conversations. If you're stuck, repeat part of what they said and turn it into a question. "You watched a movie? Which one?" With practice, asking follow-up questions will become easy and automatic. It's one of the fastest ways to sound confident in English. Even short reactions like, "Wow," or "Really?" can act as follow-ups. They show engagement and keep the other person talking. Now let's focus on reacting naturally. Reacting means showing your feelings or thoughts about what someone says in a short and friendly way. For example, if someone says, "I watched a great movie," you could say, "Oh, I love movies. Which one did you watch?" That's short, natural, and invites them to continue. You can also agree or connect. "I also like that kind of movie. It's really exciting." This shows that you're listening and engaged. Reactions can be as simple as, "Wow, really?" Or, "That's amazing." These short phrases make the conversation feel alive without overthinking it. You can combine reactions with follow-ups. "That sounds interesting. What happened next?" This is exactly how native speakers keep conversations flowing. "That sounds interesting. What happened next?" You can also share small personal experiences. "I felt the same way when I tried that." This invites the other person to respond and keeps the conversation interactive. Another tip is to match the other person's energy. If they are excited, be excited. If they're calm, be calm. This makes conversations feel natural and comfortable. Practice reacting by listening to native speakers in podcasts or videos. Notice their short responses and try repeating them aloud. Over time, reacting naturally will feel automatic, and your English conversations will feel smooth, friendly, and confident. Let's check your understanding now. I'll ask 5 questions about what we discussed. Think carefully, and I'll give the answers after 5 seconds. Question 1. Why do many English conversations stop quickly? Answer, because learners often give short answers without extending or asking follow-up questions. Question 2. How can you extend your answers naturally? Answer, by adding 1 or 2 extra sentences, a small example, or a feeling to your answer. Question 3. Give an example of a follow-up question. Answer, what happened next? Or why do you like that? Question 4. How can you react naturally to someone's story? Answer, use short expressions, show agreement, or share a related feeling, like, I also feel that way. Question 5. What is more important than perfect grammar when continuing a conversation? Answer, being genuinely interested and engaged with the other person. Great job! Today, we learned how to extend answers, ask follow-up questions, and react naturally. These small steps make your conversation sound friendly, confident, and engaging. Try these techniques in your daily conversations. Even small efforts, like adding 1 extra sentence or asking a simple follow-up, make a big difference. One way to practice is to record yourself answering simple questions and then extend your answers using the techniques we discussed. Listening back helps you notice where you can add more details or ask follow-up questions. Another tip is to practice with friends or language partners. Even short conversations are perfect practice if you focus on adding small extra details and reacting naturally. You can also think of questions ahead of time. If you know you'll talk about hobbies or weekend plans, prepare 1 or 2 follow-up questions. This will make you feel confident and ready. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about being engaging. Small steps like these make you sound much more like a native speaker over time. Try to mix all 3 skills together: extend answers, ask follow-ups, and react naturally. When you combine them, conversations start to feel effortless and friendly. Listening to native speakers in podcasts, YouTube, or real conversations is another great way to learn. Notice how they respond, extend, and ask questions. It's a live example of everything we practiced today. It's also important to be patient with yourself. Every conversation won't be perfect, but every attempt helps you improve. Confidence grows with consistent practice. You might notice that sometimes you forget to add extra details or questions. That's okay. Just gently remind yourself during the conversation, and it will get easier with practice. Finally, keep a small journal of conversation ideas or phrases you want to use. Writing them down reinforces them in your memory and helps you recall them naturally when talking. Thank you again for joining me today. Keep practicing, stay curious, and remember that conversations are a chance to connect with people, not just to speak English. I can't wait to see you in the next episode of Your English Chat Pod.